Marcus Hayes walked through the corridor of the Galactic Council building. His feet made quiet sounds on the floor made of unknown metal. All around him, alien beings moved in different ways. Some floated. Some had many legs. Some seemed to be made of light itself. Marcus was one of only a few humans in this massive place. He felt small, but his mind was sharp and ready. The council chamber doors opened before he could touch them. Sensors detected him and moved the heavy barriers aside. Inside, the room was huge and made everything look smaller. The walls were transparent, showing 3 suns hanging in space. Below the building, Marcus could see whole planets. The Galactic Council controlled everything in this section of the galaxy. They made the laws. They decided who got to trade. They chose which species could expand to new worlds. Marcus walked to the center of the chamber. His shoes clicked on the floor. No one spoke. Everyone was watching him. There were 200 different species represented in this room. Some were carbon-based like humans. Others were made of crystal, gas, or things that did not have names in human language. Speaker Dreeth sat at the highest point of the chamber. He was a Valiant, a species known for never changing their minds once they decided something. His body was tall and smooth, with skin that shifted between blue and purple colors. His eyes were not like human eyes. They were compound eyes, the kind insects had on Earth, but his intelligence was far beyond any insect. Dreeth had lived for 9,000 cycles. He had seen species rise. He had seen species fall. He had ordered wars. He had made peace. Nothing surprised him anymore. "State your purpose, human," Dreeth said. His voice came through translation machines. Without them, human ears could not have heard his real voice. Marcus lifted his hand and activated the hologram he carried. A 3-dimensional image appeared above his palm. It showed Earth. The blue planet with white clouds rotated slowly. Then the image changed. It showed human cities, human ships, human trading posts on 20 different worlds. "I come to request something," Marcus said. He spoke slowly and clearly. He knew that translation could fail if he spoke too fast. The human species requests a Class 15 Deathworld simulation test. The chamber erupted into noise. Alien beings made sounds in 100 different ways. Some vibrated. Some clicked. Some screamed. The noise was terrible and strange. Dreeth did not move. His compound eyes focused on Marcus with complete attention. "Silence," the speaker commanded. The noise stopped immediately. "Human," Dreeth continued, "you understand what you ask. A Class 15 Deathworld simulation is reserved for species that wish to prove they can survive the most extreme conditions in the galaxy. The test kills 95% of all participants. Only 3 species have ever completed it successfully. Why would a young species like humans risk this?" Marcus had prepared for this question. He had studied the Galactic Charter for 2 years. He had read every record of every species that ever made this request. "Our species needs to prove we are ready," Marcus said. "We want territory in the outer expansion zones. Those worlds are valuable. But we are young. We have only been spacefaring for 200 of your cycles. Other species do not trust us yet. They say we are too new. They say we are too weak. A Class 15 test will show that we are capable of anything." Ambassador Kesh stood up. She was from the Silicate Coalition, a species made completely of crystal. Light passed through her body in patterns that meant different things. Right now, her patterns showed anger and amusement mixed together. "The human is foolish," Kesh said. Her voice sounded like wind moving through broken glass. "Humans have shown they can trade. They can build ships. They can follow rules. But strength comes from age and technology, not from words and wishes. Your species will be destroyed in this simulation. You will die. All of you. Why would you volunteer to die? Marcus had prepared for this argument too. Because our people are ready, he said. And because of the law. He activated another hologram. This one showed the exact text from the Galactic Charter. Articles and paragraphs appeared in light. Article 73, Section 4, Marcus read aloud. Any species may request a Class 15 Deathworld simulation to prove their capability for expansion rights. If a species is denied without completing the test, they must wait 50 cycles before they can apply again for those same territories. In 50 cycles, other species will claim what we need. Ambassador. Kesh's light patterns became chaotic. The human hides behind law to force something. Unwise, she said, but Dreeth was not. Looking at Kesh, he was watching Marcus. The valiant speaker had lived long enough to recognize when someone was doing something deliberately. Marcus was not trying to trick the council, but he was definitely doing something on purpose. There was a reason he had come here. There was a reason he was sure his people could survive. Tell me, human, Dreeth said. What makes you believe your species can succeed where so many have failed? Marcus met the valiant's strange eyes directly. Because we come from a death world ourselves, Marcus said. We are already used to survival. Earth has extreme weather. It has large predators. It has diseases that kill. It has gravity that would crush weaker species. We evolved in danger. We evolved to work together to survive. We evolved to solve problems. Those things cannot be trained in a laboratory. They can only come from your world trying to kill you every single day. The chamber became quiet again. Different species were probably communicating with each other in ways humans could not detect. They were sharing thoughts across quantum networks, or through chemical signals, or through methods humans had not even discovered yet. Dreeth made a gesture. In Valiant culture, this meant he was thinking very hard about something important. The human's argument has merit, the speaker said slowly. Other species have made similar claims, but humans have proven themselves pragmatic. You do not make foolish claims. You do not volunteer for impossible tasks. He paused. Therefore, I agree. The Galactic Council will authorize a Class 15 Deathworld simulation for the human species. You will have 30 solar days to demonstrate survival capabilities. You will select 7 members from your population. They will be sent to a randomly selected hostile world. They will be observed by Council drones. They will have no assistance from human ships or technology beyond basic survival equipment. Dreeth leaned forward slightly. And human, he added, I will be watching your performance personally. I want to understand why your species is so willing to die for expansion rights. I want to understand what you truly believe about yourselves. Marcus bowed slightly. Thank you, Speaker, he said. We will not disappoint you. As Marcus left the chamber, he did not feel fear. He felt certainty. The simulation would happen. 7 of humanity's best would be sent to face a world designed to kill them. And Dreeth would watch. The entire Galactic Council would watch. They would see what humans were truly made of. They would see that humanity was not a species to dismiss or deny. They would see that humans were something the galaxy had never encountered before. They would see it, and they would be afraid. Not because humans were strong, but because humans did not give up. Ever. The dropship shook as it came down to the sky of the Death World. Inside, 7 humans sat in seats designed to hold them safe during the landing. They wore suits made of special materials that would protect them from almost anything. The suits had built-in air filters, temperature control, and medical systems. But no suit was perfect. No protection was absolute. Captain Sarah Lane looked at each member of her team. She had chosen them carefully. James Porter was a geologist who understood rocks and minerals. He was quiet but brilliant. Lisa Howard was an engineer who could build anything from almost nothing. Daniel Price was a doctor who had trained in emergency medicine. Kevin Garcia was a soldier with years of combat experience. Patricia Adams was a scientist who studied biology and life systems. Christopher Young was a specialist in survival tactics. All 7 had trained for 6 months in simulations that tried to replicate what they would face. But simulations were not real. The ship pushed down through clouds that were not water and not air. They were made of chemicals that would burn human skin instantly. The sky was the color of dried blood. 2 suns hung in the sky, and together they made the world bright and hot at the same time. The temperature display on the wall showed 134 degrees Celsius. That was 273 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing human was meant to survive in such heat. The ground beneath them was volcanic glass. Millions of years of lava had cooled and formed a landscape that looked like broken weapons pointing at the sky. Between the sharp formations, valleys went down so far that no one could see the bottom. The atmosphere reading showed oxygen was present, but in the wrong amounts. Nitrogen was too high. Pressure was almost twice what humans experienced on Earth. Every breath would feel like swimming through thick liquid. The ship landed with a heavy sound. Dust made from broken glass rose around them. "All systems ready?" Sarah asked. "Ready," came answers from every member. They were soldiers on a mission. They would not panic. They would not fail. The ramp lowered. The first blast of air hit them immediately. Even through their suits, they felt the heat. It was like standing in front of a furnace that never stopped burning. The light from both suns made everything seem like it was on fire. Sarah stepped out first. Her feet touched the volcanic glass. It crunched under her weight. The ground was not smooth. It was like walking on broken knife blades. One mistake would slice her suit open. One tear in the protective material would mean death in seconds. "Everyone stay calm," Sarah commanded. "We have work to do." The team moved into formation. They had studied the map of the Deathworld during the flight. The Galactic Council had given them basic information. There was water in the crystalline formations if they knew how to extract it. There might be life forms on this world, and that life would be dangerous. They had 30 days to survive. 30 days to show that humans could live in a place where living was supposed to be impossible. James Porter moved toward the nearest crystal formation. It was 3 meters tall and shaped like a twisted tower. He pulled out tools and began to take samples. His hands moved with precision. His mind was working, calculating, understanding. Lisa Howard and Christopher Young were building shelter. They used materials from the ship that were designed to fold and expand. They created a dome structure that would keep out the heat and the toxic air. It was not big, but it was strong. It would hold. Daniel Price checked each person's suit readings. Heart rates were elevated but normal for the circumstances. Oxygen levels were good. Temperature controls were working. Everyone was alive and everyone was ready. Kevin Garcia stood at the edge of their camp and watched. He held a weapon designed to create force fields. It would not kill anything, but it would push living things away. He was their guardian. If something came to attack them, he would be the first one they saw. Patricia Adams collected samples of the ground and air. She was searching for anything that might be alive. The Deathworld was not supposed to have many life forms. Conditions were too harsh. But the Council had warned them that creatures did exist. They had evolved to survive where nothing else could. They would be hungry. They would be deadly. The team worked for 6 hours. They did not rest. They did not stop. When the work was done, they had established a functional camp. It was small and basic, but it was theirs. It was safe. Then something moved in the distance. Everyone stopped. They turned to look at the volcanic plains that stretched beyond their camp. A shape was moving across the glass ground. It was large, very large. The sound it made was like grinding stone. Kevin brought up his weapon. "Everyone inside the shelter, now." The creature approached slowly. It had 6 legs and a body made of scales and armor. Its head had mandibles that clicked and scraped together. It was 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Its eyes were not visible, but it could sense them. It knew they were there. Sarah moved inside the shelter with her team. She activated the force field generator that Lisa had connected to their power system. A barrier of energy appeared around their camp. It hummed with power. The creature came closer and closer. Its mandibles scraped against the force field. The sound was terrible. Sparks of energy jumped between the creature's body and the barrier. The creature pushed harder. It wanted to get to the humans. It was hungry. But the force field would not break. After several minutes, the creature lost interest. It turned away and walked toward the plains. It was looking for easier prey. Sarah watched it disappear into the distance. "That was expected," she said. "The council told us there would be predators. We are ready for them. We have prepared for this." They spent the first night in their shelter. The walls kept the deadly heat outside. The air filters made the atmosphere safe to breathe. They ate cold food because fire was too dangerous in their enclosed space. They checked their equipment again and again. By morning, they had already begun to understand the Deathworld. They had found water in the crystalline formations. Patricia had discovered that certain rocks could be broken down to extract minerals they needed. James had mapped the terrain and identified safe routes for traveling. Lisa was already planning how to expand their shelter to make it better. They were not surviving by luck. They were surviving by thinking. They were surviving by working together. They were surviving because they understood that the only way to stay alive on a world that wanted to kill them was to be smarter than the world was deadly. And as the days passed, they would become even smarter. They would learn the patterns of the predators. They would understand the rhythm of the 2 suns. They would make this impossible place into their home. Not because they were special, but because they refused to fail. Because they were human. Because humans were born on a Deathworld, and a Deathworld was the only place where humans truly belonged. 8 days had passed on the Deathworld. The human team had accomplished things that should have taken weeks to complete. The shelter had grown from a simple dome into a larger structure with multiple chambers. One section was for sleeping. One section was for food preparation. One section was for water storage and purification. The command center housed all the communication equipment and monitoring systems. Sarah Lane stood outside the shelter and surveyed their camp. Everything was organized and efficient. There was no wasted space. There was no wasted time. Every action had a purpose. Every action moved them closer to survival. The surveillance drones hummed overhead. The Galactic Council was watching every moment. They had placed cameras that could record invisible light and thermal vision. They had audio sensors that captured every sound. The humans knew they were being observed, and they did not care. Let the Council watch. Let them see what humans could do. James Porter walked back from an expedition into the Crystalline Valley. He was carrying samples of rock that glowed faintly in the shadow of the overhang. His analysis equipment had confirmed something important. These crystals contained trace amounts of useful minerals. More than that, they contained something that could be broken down into water through a chemical process Lisa was already developing. "We can get water without mining so deep," James reported to Sarah. "The crystals form naturally on the surface. We harvest them, break them down, and extract enough liquid for drinking and cooling systems." Patricia Adams had been working on something even more important. She had been studying the local life forms. The predators that hunted near their camp followed patterns. They hunted at specific times. They avoided certain areas. They had territories they did not cross. Patricia had created a map of these territories in the sand. It showed where the humans could travel safely and where they needed to place guards. We have a 4-hour window every 16 hours when predators are least active, Patricia explained. They are hunting elsewhere. This is our best time to gather materials and expand our camp. Daniel Price was training the team in physical conditioning. The gravity on the Deathworld was higher than Earth. The atmosphere was denser. Every movement required more effort. But the human body was adapting. Blood pressure was adjusting. Muscles were getting stronger. Lungs were learning to process the air with better efficiency. In another week, we will be completely acclimated, Daniel said. We will be as strong on this world as we are on Earth. Our bodies are already changing to match the environment. Kevin Garcia had spent his time mapping the terrain and identifying defensive positions. He had marked places where the human team could take shelter if they encountered a threat they could not handle. He had positioned force field generators in a perimeter around their camp. He had created a system of barriers that would divide predators and prevent them from reaching the shelter's center. We have created a fortress, Kevin said. Not a large fortress, but a strong one. Any creature that tries to attack us will have to navigate through 3 separate barrier zones. By the time it reaches the center, it will be exhausted and disoriented. Christopher Young had been experimenting with weapons and tools. He had discovered that certain rocks from the Deathworld could be shaped and hardened using heat and pressure. They made effective digging tools and cutting implements. But more importantly, he had found a way to use the sonic frequencies from their equipment to create vibrations that some predators did not like. Sound could be a weapon on a world like this. Lisa Howard had been working on the most ambitious project. She was using parts from their ship and materials from the Deathworld to build an advanced shelter system. This new structure would have separate water processing chambers, air filtration systems, and sealed storage areas. It would be more than a shelter. It would be a permanent habitation. By the end of 10 days, we will have infrastructure, Lisa said. This will not be a temporary camp. This will be a settlement. A place where humans could live indefinitely if they needed to. But on the 8th day, something changed. The surveillance drones registered movement from beyond the perimeter. Multiple large creatures were approaching from the north. Not just predators. A whole group of them. The Galactic Council had not warned about this possibility. Patricia studied the readings. Her face became serious. 5 creatures approaching, she said. They are different from the ones we have seen before. They are larger. They move together like they are coordinated. They might be hunting as a pack. Sarah made a decision immediately. Everyone to defensive positions, she commanded. Kevin, expand the barrier zones. Patricia, get us readings on their behavior. James, prepare the water extraction equipment for emergency evacuation if needed. Christopher, activate the sonic frequencies. Lisa, prepare the backup power systems. The team moved without hesitation. They had trained for multiple threats. They had practiced responses to different scenarios. But a coordinated pack attack was something worse than they had faced before. The creatures came closer. They were shaped like reptiles, but larger than anything on Earth. Their skin was thick and covered with natural armor. They had teeth like daggers. Their claws could tear through rock. And they were coming directly toward the human camp. Kevin activated the first barrier zone. Energy erupted outward in a wall of force. The creatures hit the barrier and screamed. A sound like metal being torn apart echoed across the Deathworld. The creatures did not retreat. They pressed forward, throwing their weight against the energy wall. Second barrier activating, Kevin said. The creatures hit the second wall. This time, they did not scream. They were learning. They were figuring out the pattern. They were adapting. Sarah made another decision. Christopher, increase the sonic frequencies to maximum, she ordered. Patricia, flood their hunting pattern zones with heat pulses. Make them think we are everywhere. The humans did not wait for the predators to break through. They became active predators themselves. They flooded the area with sensory stimulation that confused and disturbed the approaching creatures. The sonic waves created vibrations in the ground and air that made the predators disoriented. The heat pulses lit up on their thermal sensing organs in confusing patterns. The creatures stopped advancing. They hesitated. Then, slowly, they turned away. They were too confused to hunt. The prey that had seemed easy and isolated was now appearing in multiple locations and creating sensations. They did not understand. The pack retreated across the volcanic plains. Sarah watched them disappear and then turned to her. Team, they were testing us, she said. The council sent them. They wanted to see if we would panic. They wanted to see if we would run or hide. Instead, we fought. We thought. We won. Patricia was already analyzing the data from the encounter. The creatures are intelligent, she said. They communicate with each other. They plan together. They adapt to obstacles. They are not simple animals. They are warriors. Then, we need to think like warriors too, Sarah said. From now on, we do not just survive. We dominate. We control this world. We show the council that humans are not just capable. We are superior. The team worked through the night. They strengthened their barriers. They expanded their defenses. They improved their early warning systems. By dawn, they had transformed their settlement into something that looked more like a fortress than a camp. The surveillance drones continued to record. And in the Galactic Council chambers, Dreeth watched the footage with complete attention. He had seen species survive on Deathworlds before, but he had never seen a species evolve so quickly from fearful creatures into confident strategists. The humans were not just learning to survive. They were learning to dominate. They were learning to treat the Deathworld as their territory, and that terrified him more than anything he had ever witnessed. On the 10th day, everything changed. The temperature sensors showed something unusual happening at the edge of the scan range. A creature was approaching that was larger than anything the humans had encountered before. The drones captured the thermal signature and sent data back to the Galactic Council. When the Council saw the readings, they fell silent. The creature appeared on the horizon as the first sun rose. Its size was impossible to process immediately. It stood 5 meters tall at the shoulder. Its body stretched 12 meters from head to tail. Its skin was not scales like the other predators. It was thick and covered with natural biological armor. Its head was massive, with a jaw that could crush metal. This was a Krell beast. The Council had released the apex predator. The test had just become a killing field. Sarah Lane was in the command center when the alarm sounded. The readings came in, and her first instinct was to panic. But she was a soldier. She had trained too long to fall apart in front of danger. She activated the communication system. All personnel to the war room. Now, she commanded. Her voice was calm, but everyone who knew her could hear the tension underneath. The team gathered around the tactical display. The Krell was still moving toward them, but it was not moving fast. It was large enough that speed was not necessary. It would reach them within hours. When it arrived, no force field they had built would stop it. The barriers that had worked against other predators would be like paper against a creature like that. Kevin Garcia studied the footage. His military experience had taught him about overwhelming force. The Krell was overwhelming force in its most basic form. But he also knew something else. All creatures, no matter how strong, had weaknesses. "It is large," Kevin said slowly. "Too large for a creature that size to move freely. The terrain is narrow in the crystalline valley. It cannot turn quickly. It cannot move sideways through tight passages. It can only move forward." Patricia nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "The creature hunts by sight and heat," she added. "Its eyes are positioned to see forward and slightly to the sides. It has a blind spot directly behind its head and underneath its body. If we keep out of those angles of sight, it will not focus on us." Christopher Young was already moving. He pulled up the terrain map and started drawing lines. His tactical mind was working through possibilities. "We use the crystalline formations," he said. "We create a corridor. The creature will follow heat and movement signatures. We leave false signatures that lead it deeper into the valley. We place the real humans in concealed positions. We let it pass underneath us." Lisa Howard caught what they were planning. "We seal it in," she said. "Once it is deep enough in the valley, we activate every barrier we have. We trap it below us. It is too large to climb. It is too heavy to break through reinforced barriers. It becomes a prisoner." Sarah looked at each member of her team. This was not a plan based on hope. This was a plan based on understanding enemy weakness and using environment to advantage. This was the kind of thinking that had kept humans alive for millions of years. This was what Deathworld evolution taught. "We have 3 hours to prepare," Sarah said. "Everyone knows their role. This creature will not kill us. This creature will show the galaxy what humans truly are." The team split into action. Kevin and Patricia positioned heat generators on portable equipment. They programmed the generators to create moving signatures that would travel deeper into the crystalline valley. Kevin also worked on positioning the barrier generators in locations where they would create a perimeter. The Krell could not escape. Christopher and James worked on the corridor itself. Using explosive charges salvaged from their ship, they carefully positioned charges at the base of crystal formations. The explosions would not kill the Krell, but they would create an attractive pathway. The creature would follow the path of least resistance. Creatures always did. Daniel and Lisa worked on the barrier reinforcement. They took every piece of equipment they had and created a network of force fields that would, when activated, create a cage underneath the crystalline overhang. The cage would not hold forever, but it only needed to hold for a few days. That was all the time they needed. The Krell appeared at midday. Its massive form blocked out the sky. The ground beneath its feet cracked and split. Its breathing was like wind through a cavern. It was so large that it seemed impossible such a creature could exist. But it did. And it was real. The heat generators activated. The false signatures appeared ahead of the creature. The Krell's head lifted. It sensed prey, movement, food. It began to walk forward, following the signatures deeper into the valley. The humans watched from their hidden positions. They were positioned above the valley on the crystal formations. They were completely invisible to the creature below. Kevin kept his hand near the barrier controls. Christopher maintained his position near the explosive triggers. The others waited, barely breathing. The Krell moved deeper. 15 meters. 20 meters. The heat signatures kept moving, always leading forward. The creature's focus was completely on the prey ahead. It did not look up. It did not look to the sides. It only looked forward. When the creature reached the marked position, Christopher activated the explosives. The sound was tremendous. The earth shook. The crystalline formations vibrated. But the explosives were carefully controlled. They did not damage the valley. They simply collapsed the sides slightly, funneling the Krell deeper into what had now become a trap. The creature roared. It was a sound of rage and hunger, but it could not turn around in the narrow space. It was too large. It began to move forward faster, following the heat signatures that still danced ahead of it. Kevin activated the barrier generators. Energy erupted around the Krell, creating walls on every side. The creature slammed against the barriers with its massive head. The barriers held. The force of its impact created cracks of energy in the air. But the barriers did not break. The Krell thrashed and fought for hours. It threw itself at the barriers from every angle. It clawed and bit at the energy walls. It screamed with a sound that could be heard kilometers away. But gradually, the realization came to it. This prey was not something it could kill. This prey had become something else. This prey had become captors. By sunset, the Krell had stopped struggling. It stood in its prison of energy and crystal, breathing heavily, its eyes moving back and forth with primal rage. But it understood. It was caged. It was defeated. Sarah stood on top of the crystal formation above the trapped creature. She looked down at the apex predator that the Galactic Council had sent to kill her team. The creature that was supposed to be unstoppable. The creature that represented the Council's confidence that humans would fail. Message to the Galactic Council, Sarah said, knowing the drones were recording. The apex predator is contained. We are secure. We are ready for whatever you send next. In the Galactic Council chambers, Dreef sat motionless. Around him, other delegates were having loud reactions. Ambassador Kesh's light patterns were chaotic and confused. But the valiant speaker said nothing. He simply watched the recording of the humans standing above the caged Krell. The humans had not killed it. They had not needed to kill it. They had simply understood it, predicted its behavior, and turned its own nature against it. They had made the apex predator into a prisoner. Dreef had led for 9,000 cycles. He had seen species rise and fall. He had believed he understood everything about combat and strategy. But he had never seen anything like this. Never. The humans were not just surviving. They were transcending, and the speaker was beginning to understand something that filled him with ancient fear. Humans were not just a new species. They were a species that could learn faster than anything he had ever encountered. If they survived this simulation, if they continued to evolve, there would come a day when humans would not be asking for expansion rights. They would be taking them, not through military conquest, but through understanding and adaptability. The age of human dominance had not started yet, but it was coming, and there was nothing anyone in the Galactic Council could do to stop it. The human team could have waited for the full 30 days. They had the supplies. They had the shelter. They had proven they could survive anything the Deathworld could send. But on the 15th day, Sarah made a decision. They were ready. They had learned everything they could. There was no reason to stay any longer. Prepare for extraction, Sarah commanded. We are leaving this world. The team packed their equipment. They collected samples of the creatures they had studied, the minerals they had found, and the data they had gathered. Everything would be valuable for the Galactic Council to analyze. Everything would show that humans did not just survive. They thrived. They learned. They conquered. The extraction ship descended through the crimson sky. It was not the same dropship that had brought them down. This was a council vessel, provided to retrieve them after their mission was complete. The humans boarded without looking back at their fortress or their camp. They had accomplished what they came to do. When the humans entered the Galactic Council chambers, something had changed in the room's atmosphere. The delegates who had been so certain that humans would fail were now uncertain. The delegates who had been confident that the test would prove human weakness were now questioning everything. Sarah Lane walked to the center of the chamber. She was not wearing her survival suit. She was wearing a formal human uniform. Behind her, the other 6 members of her team stood in perfect formation. They had survived. They had thrived. They had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. Drith rose from his position of authority. This was unprecedented. The speaker rarely stood unless he was addressing critical matters of state. The human team has completed the Class 15 Deathworld simulation, he announced. His voice carried absolute authority through the chamber. The survival rate was 100%. The resource efficiency was superior to previous records. The tactical adaptability was extraordinary. Ambassador Kesh tried to object. Her crystal form flickered with desperate patterns. "This proves nothing," she said, but her voice was weak. One team of exceptional individuals does not represent an entire species. We must test more humans. We must demand additional trials. But before Drith could respond, another delegate stood. It was Trax, a valiant military commander who had fought in more conflicts than any being alive except for the speaker himself. Trax had led armies. Trax had conquered worlds. Trax understood the meaning of what he had witnessed. "I know combat," Trax said. His voice was quiet but carried enormous weight. "I know strategy. I know what makes species strong and what makes them weak." These humans did not win on that Deathworld because they were lucky. They won because they understood something that most species never learn. They moved as one organism with multiple parts. When the female leader gave a command, every human knew exactly what to do. They did not hesitate. They did not question. They executed with precision. Trax pointed directly at Sarah. The human team treated the apex predator as a problem to solve, not as an enemy to defeat. They did not waste energy trying to kill it. They simply understood its nature and contained it. This is not the behavior of a young species. This is the behavior of warriors who have been tested by something far worse than any Krell ever could be. The chamber became silent. Trax continued. They survived a Deathworld. And they are a species that originated on a Deathworld. This means they carry in their genes and their minds the knowledge of how to survive when everything wants to kill you. This means they have spent millions of years learning cooperation, adaptation, and problem solving. These are not learned skills. These are evolutionary advantages. Ambassador Kesh tried to interrupt. "But they are young," she protested. "They lack technology. They lack military power." Trax turned to face her directly. "They lack nothing," the military commander said flatly. "They have what matters most. They have the ability to learn and adapt faster than any species I have encountered. They have the ability to work together without conflict. They have courage that is based on understanding, not on arrogance." He paused. Every great empire begins with a small group of exceptional individuals. These 7 humans are the foundation of something the galaxy has never seen before. Drith sat back in his position of authority. He had heard what he needed to hear. He had witnessed what he needed to witness. The Galactic Council acknowledges the human request for expansion rights, the speaker announced. Territory in the outer expansion zones is granted. Human settlements will be permitted on all designated worlds. Furthermore, the human species is invited to join the Trade and Security Coordination Committee. This position has been vacant for 3 cycles. We believe humans are suited to fill this role. The chamber erupted. Some delegates protested. Some delegates showed signs of agreement. But the speaker's word was law. The decision had been made. Sarah left the council chamber with her team. They had come to prove themselves. They had done exactly that. But as they walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council building, Sarah thought about something Drith had said. He had said he wanted to understand why humans were willing to volunteer for impossible tasks. The answer was simple. Humans had always done this. They had climbed mountains. They had crossed oceans. They had built civilizations in deserts and jungles. They had faced predators and disease and starvation. And they had survived. Not because they were exceptional individuals, but because they were humans. And humans did not give up. In the months that followed, human settlements began to appear on worlds throughout the outer expansion zones. Human traders established routes across space. Human diplomats began to meet with species they had never encountered before. Human technology, while not the most advanced in the galaxy, was robust and practical. Human ships, while not the fastest, were reliable and safe. And slowly, the Galactic Council began to realize something that filled them with a feeling that had no name. They realized that the humans they had considered a young and unimportant species might be the beginning of something that would change everything. The humans had come to prove they belonged in the galaxy. They had done that. But in the process, they had made the entire galactic power structure uncertain. Because humans did not pursue power through dominance. Humans pursued survival through adaptation and cooperation. And that was something no one in the established order had encountered before. Years passed. A decade, a century. Human populations spread across dozens of worlds. Human scientists contributed to research. Human artists created works that influenced cultures they had never met. Human soldiers served alongside other species in defense of the galaxy. And slowly, inevitably, humans became something the Galactic Council had feared most. They became indispensable, not through conquest, not through force, but through willingness to do what others would not do, to go where others would not go, to try things others believed were impossible. On a planet in the human territories, Sarah Lane stood and looked at the sun. Not the crimson sun of the Deathworld, but a normal star, yellow and bright. Behind her, a human city was being built. Humans were having families. Humans were building futures. She thought about the crow. She thought about how they had not killed it. They had simply understood it. That was the true strength of humanity. Not the ability to destroy, but the ability to understand, to adapt, to survive by becoming better, not by becoming stronger. And she knew that somewhere in the Galactic Council chambers, Dreeth was still watching, still trying to understand what made humans different. The answer was always the same. Humans were born on a world that wanted to kill them. They had learned to thrive there, and now they would learn to thrive everywhere. Not because they wanted to dominate, but because they could not help but succeed. Because they were human. And humans did not stop until they had accomplished what they set out to do.